Hello everyone, this is the promotory channel. Today we're going to take apart this engine. So this is a MAN D2866 model LF06. The engine was removed from a MAN semi-truck. I don't remember the model right now, but I'll insert a photo from one like this. So what's the reason for removing it? Let's call it scheduled repair. That is, nothing is knocking, nothing is rattling. Basically, the engine runs fine, but there are a few minor issues, a few little issues. For example, the gasket between the 5th and 6th cylinders blew out, but as a rule, if it's between the 5th and 6th, then most likely it's the 5th cylinder, and it usually blows out toward the exhaust valve. And here's something else we noticed when we removed this engine. All the air manifolds, all these hoses, they're all clogged with dust. So, somewhere, besides the air filter, it was taking in dust. This is a common reason. A common problem with these engines. Well, actually, not just these engines, but in general. It's already late, it's dark now, but tomorrow I'll probably show the cause. So I'll show the reason why dust was getting into the engine and insert some footage. Either the hose isn't original, or the filter isn't original, or someone just didn't do it quite right. So we can already make some assumptions about the condition of the engine itself, since we saw dust in the air intake manifold. We can already assume that, for example, the rings might be worn out, the cylinder liners might be worn out, and so on. But let's not guess, we'll take it apart and see everything. I've already washed this engine. It's likely impossible to clean it better than this. I washed it for nearly an hour, but there are still some dirty spots and areas with oil. Still, after disassembly, every part, every component will need to be washed separately. Wash, clean, and so on. So, to start, I'll remove some of these attachments here. By the way, it broke here. They broke the tip when they were taking it off. But we'll replace it. It's not a big deal. So first I'll remove all these little tubes, hoses, all these brackets, and so on. Then I'll take off the gearbox and remove the clutch. What else do I want to show? Here's another point. We can see that our gear shift shaft, the gear selector shaft, is worn out. Look at how much play there is. So basically, as usual, this is a common problem with all ZF gearbox. Here we have a 16-speed gearbox, 16 gears, 16S151. Well, maybe I'll talk to the owner. Maybe we'll drain the oil and take a look. If the oil has water in it, if there's water present, then maybe we'll do something here. But for now, these are just thoughts out loud, you could say. There hasn't been any discussion yet. So basically, everything is as usual for us. We take it apart and inspect for defects. Then we see which new parts we need. Some things we send out for repair, some things we fix ourselves. We assemble and start it up. I'm not sure about painting yet, it hasn't been discussed, but maybe it will be. So I remove the gearbox, move the clutch, and I'm draining the transmission oil. So about the clutch, what do we see? We see that the disc was replaced not long ago, meaning a new disc was installed. We can see that there's contact in this area, but there's no contact here. So this part isn't working yet, it hasn't worn in yet. So this means that only the clutch disc was replaced. The pressure plate and flywheel are still the old ones. I'll check with the owner if there were no clutch issues. We won't touch them, just clean everything up. We'll clean it, blow it out, and leave the old disc, the old flywheel and the old pressure plate. The flywheel also looks to be in good condition visually. There's no noticeable wear. Oh well, of course the bearing will be replaced. Now as for the oil, we can see that the amount is what it should be. The oil basically has no emulsion or metal shavings. So in general it's normal oil that's already been used. That's it, I've drained the oil. Now I'll screw in the plug and take the engine to the workbench. So I'm starting to disassemble the engine. I've already brought it here to the workspace. I put the table away for now because the oil pan is very tall. So the valve covers are about at the level of my head, something like that. So for now I'll be disassembling it in this position. Later when I lay it on its side, I'll set up the table. I'm starting the disassembly. I'll be filming everything in time-lapse mode. Let's go! Satsupuna. I removed the intake manifold and checked the air channels. The first and second cylinders have oil, which is right where the breather outlet is. It's possible that the breather was throwing oil. We can even see that the third cylinder has oil in it. And further down it looks like it's just dry dust. In the fourth cylinder, we can already see that there's dust on the walls. In the fifth one, you can also see dust on the walls. And the sixth cylinder too. Now let's look at the air intake manifold. We can also see that the first, second, and third ones have oil in them. But, for example, on the fourth cylinder, you can clearly see that there's dust in the manifold. This is our fourth cylinder, and this is our fifth cylinder. So, let's take a look at the fifth cylinder. Look at all the dust and dirt in the manifold. So, there's definitely dust present in the manifold. Alright, I've unbolted the rocker assembly. Now, I'm removing the rocker assembly, taking out the push rods, and removing the injectors. I'll spray them so they loosen up a bit. So I've removed the cylinder heads, and what do we see? So the first thing we see is a burnt gasket on the fifth cylinder towards the exhaust valve, just like I said. So this is our sixth cylinder and this is our fifth cylinder. And we can see that here the gasket is black, so we can see that it burned out on the side of the exhaust valve, just as we expected. So the next thing we see is that the cylinder heads have been resurfaced on a surface grinder. And that was actually quite recently. You can see the heads are ground, so everything here is great. I think this time we won't need the surface grinding machine. Next, what else can we see? I've already measured the protrusion of the liner above the cylinder block to see why exactly the fifth cylinder burned out. So, well, the block is dirty. We're looking at it roughly, give or take. So, it's about 0.10, well, 200s, 10, 200s, 10. So basically we can see that, well, I didn't measure everything. They're all dirty here. It's impossible to measure anything in this kind of dirt. I just cleaned this one spot. Basically, we can see that the sleeve has a 0.08 protrusion, which is pretty much how it should be. It's not really clear why the gasket burned through, since the block is in good condition. The heads are ground and the gaskets are good. I was filming with that camera over there. It's set up on the tripod like this, and I don't know if you could see it or not, but I was loosening the heads almost without a pipe. There was no cracking sound, no crunching, nothing at all. So, I was loosening the heads without any effort. Usually I loosen the heads with this pipe and with a characteristic cracking sound. Okay, as a guess, and this is just a guess, the person was tightening these heads, but the wrench, for example, might not have been calibrated, or maybe it was off, the setting was off, or something else. Okay. As a result, the tightening was done incorrectly. So, you could say the heads were only tightened halfway. That's my first assumption as to why the heads came off so easily and why the gasket was blown on the fifth cylinder towards the exhaust valve. Well, maybe why not? That's my first assumption, and my second assumption, we can see that the cylinder head bolts are not original. That is, it's clear that new ones were installed. There's some kind of mark here, it's not clear what it is. So maybe after tightening, these bolts just stretched. They stretched and accordingly, they no longer hold. I'll clean them too, check what brand they are, measure them, and maybe they're stretched. Even the bolts might need to be replaced. Maybe I'll find some old original ones, but not these. So, I have two guesses why the gasket and cylinder heads burned out. We can also see there's carbon buildup here. Pretty significant deposits. So, maybe oil was burning here. Let's keep disassembling. Next, we'll remove the fuel injection pump, set the timing marks, and check them. I unscrew the inspection window. Inside we can see the mark, which needs to be centered in the hole. And now, let's check the marks on the flywheel. Well, I didn't see anything on the flywheel because it's all dirty, covered in dust and so on. So now I'm putting a mark on the edge of the flywheel. And then once I remove the flywheel, I'll take a look. Alright, this is how we put the mark. And when I remove the flywheel, I'll check how many degrees there were. That's it, now I can remove the fuel injection pump. So I turned the engine over, laid it on its side, put it on the table, and now I'm removing the oil pan. Next, I'm removing the pulley, the flywheel, and the flywheel cover. So we can see the rear oil seal was leaking, it's wet around it, the seal needs to be replaced. So I've taken out the camshaft and you can see it right away. Here's a worn out cam lobe. You can see with the naked eye that it's shorter and you can immediately spot the chipped cam lobe. So the camshaft needs to be replaced 100%. If we look at all the cam lobes, it turns out they're all in this condition. So the camshaft needs to be replaced along with the hub. To continue, next I remove the pulley, the flywheel and the cover. I remove the pulley, the flywheel and the flywheel cover. The tappets also need to be replaced, and of course the camshaft bushings need to be replaced too. So I'll just mention it briefly now because I'm already dog tired. It's 10 minutes past midnight. I'll give the specifics tomorrow. So the liners need to be replaced, the main and connecting rod bearings need to be replaced, the piston rings need to be replaced, and the tappets need to be replaced, and the camshaft too. As for the crankshaft, I don't know yet. There is some play in the bearings, maybe the journal is already undersized, but that needs to be checked. So the fuel equipment definitely needs to be repaired, that's the pump and the injectors. And basically, what else can I say? We'll be repairing the compressor, and as for the cylinder heads, they'll be disassembled. Maybe we'll need to replace the bushings, the valve guides, the valve stem seals, the usual stuff. And we won't be taking them to the machine shop either. So these are just the preliminary results. I'll record another video clip tomorrow anyway, but for now, that's how things stand. So let's continue. So what else can I add besides what I said yesterday? Last night, when I was taking apart the pistons, I looked at them and said they seemed to be in good condition. But today, you could say with fresh eyes, I took another look. So on 3 pistons, we can see these kinds of scratches. That is, we see a scratch on the skirt of one piston. On the second, on the third, some are bigger, some are smaller. Those other 3 pistons are in better shape, but these 3 have scratches like this. currently. The decision is whether to replace just these 3 pistons or install a new piston set, likely keeping the same bearings. I already said the connecting rod bearings are better here, but the main bearings are worse. Well, basically everything I mentioned yesterday evening still stands. In addition, we've now got 3 pistons added to the list, and we've already disassembled the turbocharger and sent it for repair. There are some issues with the turbo as well. There's a small detail. For example, we see a clamp that connects this inlet pipe and it was attached with this kind of clamp. As we can see, it's a plumbing clamp, and here if you look closely you can see 6870 6.872. That's the size we see. There were some tack welds here done in a very, well, something was done here at some point. And in this spot too, there's a lot of dust in the air manifold, so it's possible that air was also being sucked in through this place, is bypassing the filters. Easy. You can see how much dirt there is. So we'll need to address this issue as well. It's likely, well, not likely, but necessary to get this clamp, but only the factory one, and replace this rubber part. So the turbocharger has already been sent for repair, and the fuel injection pump and injectors have also been sent for repair. I've already removed the cylinder liners and knocked them out. Next, I'll take out the rubber seals under the sleeves, remove the lifters, take off the bearings, and maybe remove these brackets too. For convenience, to make it easier to wash and everything, the engine block will be sent for cleaning. Alright, so I've taken out the rubber seals. The seals are already a bit worn out, of course. You can see they've settled. They're not round anymore. Some are crushed and so on. Well, the rubber seals obviously need to be replaced. So basically that's it. The engine's disassembled. Only the block is left. Now I'm taking it for cleaning, washing it and cleaning it up. So now a small addition to what I said earlier. First, you should draw any conclusions after washing and cleaning the engine, or really any part. That is, you should inspect, check for defects and so on only on a clean engine or a clean part. And that's when you should make decisions and draw conclusions. So first, after I wash this block, I'll now explain in more detail what's wrong with the block. I'm not sure if you can see it here, but I'll add footage from another camera too. As we remember, the cylinder heads on this engine weren't tightened. The heads came off very easily with a small wrench, almost without any effort. So, as we can see, it starts almost from this side and goes through the entire block, ending only on the other side. I installed the block here at our 0 point, and at this spot it dips into a pit of 0.08 millimeters. Here, look, the block is at 0, and in this spot it dips in the pit by 0.11 millimeters. Here as well, the block is at 0, and in this spot it dips by 0.07 millimeters. If we move further in, it's 0.10, here it's already 0.12, and so on. And now, I want to show you with the feeler gauge. So we put it in like this, and the gauge is 0.2. I'm showing the gauge 0.2, and it goes through freely. That's how worn down the block is here. Well, accordingly, we see that here it doesn't fit, and here it doesn't fit either. It only sinks in right here. It's either because of the bolts the bolts were poor quality. They just stretched out and the heads got loose. Or maybe they initially tightened the cylinder heads incorrectly. For example, I assume as a possibility that they used a faulty torque wrench as an option. So I offered the owner of this engine 3 options. The first option is to leave it as it is. That is, while the new sleeves are in place and haven't sunk, he could use it for some time. Well, usually this period is about a year or a year and a half. The second option is to take the block in for machining, to machine the surface where the cylinder heads fit. You should machine off about 0.2 millimeters. But what are the downsides of this option? First, it's expensive, and second, it takes a lot of time. And third, you'll have to look for repair pistons that are shorter. The compression height is 0.2 millimeters lower. That's also a problem. First, there could be an issue with the delivery time for these pistons, and the second problem could be the price. So let me remind you, we're limited on both time and budget with this engine repair. Well, the third option is to replace the block, that is, to look for a similar block in good condition somewhere and just replace it. Well, most likely, we'll go with the third option. For now, we're still thinking about it, there's no decision yet, but most likely it'll be the third option. Also, I want to show you the cylinder heads. Also, when I was disassembling, I said that they were ground and that nothing needed to be done with them. Again, those were hasty conclusions. And when I washed and cleaned them, we can see the ridge that goes all around the diameter where the sealing ring for the gasket sits. I'm disassembling the cylinder heads to send them for surface grinding. I've already disassembled 3 heads. Basically, the valves are more or less in good condition, but I'll still have to machine the working surface on the lathe and lap them. Maybe they'll all turn out good, but we'll see. Now I'm taking apart 3 more heads. So this is how I disassemble the heads, checking their condition and making sure the seat doesn't rotate. We can see there are cracks in the bridges here. Well, that's a common problem with man heads, and it's very hard to find the head without any cracks. If there are no exhaust gases in the cooling system, you can ignore these cracks. Well, as I said, we'll grind and machine the valves, recoat all the seats, and so on. That's it. This is how I disassemble the cylinder heads and send them to the machine shop. So there'll be less filming. And let's say in the previous series, since I'm limited on time, I have literally about 10 or 12 days for this engine. So I'll only be filming the most interesting moments, but all the same work will be done, that's clear. Now we're starting to assemble this engine. We have a different block. In the previous episode I talked about what happened to the old block, oak, so we settled on the third option. This is a different block. I've already washed it, cleaned it up a bit, and now my task is to go over all the threads. I'll run through all the threads on the block now. I'll also clean it up here on top. Since I plan to paint it, so I'll clean it a bit now. I'll remove the rust and old paint, just as usual basically. So I already have some parts, and we're still waiting for some other parts, including waiting for new rust remover. I've disassembled it. Some work has already been done, We've already taken the cylinder heads to the surface grinder. The turbo is ready, so I'll be showing and explaining everything as we go along. Also, I'll mention, I talked about this in the last episode, but didn't explain the whole situation. So let me briefly say that I'm short on time. This person came to me for repairs unexpectedly. It wasn't planned. I had made arrangements. I had plans to repair a 10-cylinder engine, but since I was counting on that 10-cylinder engine coming in for repair, I didn't take on any other work. Then, when I realized that the person had disappeared, I started looking for other work and another client. The owner of this engine, the owner of this truck, is Anton. I got in touch with Anton, or rather, Anton asked me how much the engine repair would cost, and I answered him. He asked if he could come to me for repairs sometime. I said, well, right now I have some free time, so if you want, you can come over. So we had this conversation on Saturday, and by Monday evening, they were already removing the engine, meaning people were already working, and the car was on the pit, and the engine was already being taken out. By Wednesday night, my engine was already taken apart. That's how fast it all happened. But let me remind you, we're limited on time. That is until the beginning of February, around the 10th or so. My engine has to be ready, and not only ready, but already installed in the car. So that's why I'm limited on time, and the filming won't be as detailed as, say, the previous series. But I'll try to record and shoot as much as I can. The owner of this engine didn't plan on needing repairs, and he's also a bit limited on budget, so we're making some choice. Basically, the goal is to find a happy medium. So I explained everything what's going on, right? Now, we're starting to repair the engine block. Oh, and I'll add that this car, well, the car is here now in the pit, but it was actually bought in Perm, and it's going to be sent to Altai. So, my previous engine was from Buryatia, and this engine is from Altai. I removed some old gaskets and so on. I cleaned up all the threads throughout the block. I also cleaned all the oil channels. I removed the oil jets, I blew them out and cleaned them. By the way, the oil jets here are a bit different. So the block is now fully prepared for assembly. I'll start by installing the camshaft bushings and the camshaft itself. Although it's not here yet, so we're still waiting for it. So, for now I'll do some other preparatory work. The camshaft isn't here yet, so we're still waiting. So, for now, I'll do some other preparatory work. Subtitles by Dimatorzo. So I polished the crankshaft and now we can see how it looks completely different. When I clamped it in the machine and started wiping it down, I noticed a mark, a casting with the letters BF. That means this isn't the original crankshaft from the factory. It was replaced at some point. I can never say for sure why it was replaced. Basically, we can see that this crankshaft isn't new. There's already some wear on it. I'll explain more in a moment. So it has already been used on this engine. Let's hope it will continue to serve us well and work properly. Now about the wear. All the connecting rod journals are sized at 89.98. That is, I just measured all of them now. Well, as we can see, this one is even, 89.99. So all the connecting rod journals are within the normal range. As for the main journals, basically the 7th, 6th, 5th and 4th ones, there, it's about 103.975. So it's only about half a hundred under spec. And the first one is also within spec. The second and third main journals are undersized. The biggest undersize is on the third main journal. So as we can see, the size here is 103.96. So it's 200 below the lower limit. That means we won't do anything about it. And in fact, there's nothing we can do about it. Well, if we grind it down to the repair size, it will be even worse. Usually repair bearings on these engines don't last. That's it. It's best to leave it as is. My crankshaft is ready. It's polished and measured. Now I've also removed the washer. I'll put on this new thrust ring for the oil seal. And basically, oh, it still needs to be blown out. Blow out what? That's obvious. And basically, the crankshaft can be installed. And I'll also mention that there are intermediate size bearings. Those who know there are intermediate size bearings, which means you can install the bearings without grinding the crankshaft. For this engine, the intermediate size bearings for this crankshaft come in 1/10mm increments. That's cool. So the size is 0.1. Alright, that means the block is fully prepared. We'll be installing the camshaft. They brought me the camshaft. They brought the camshaft bushings today, so we'll start assembling soon. I've done most of the prep, but some things are still unfinished. But still, we'll start assembling, and as we go through the engine assembly, we'll get distracted by some prep work. So now I'm unpacking the camshaft. I'm installing the camshaft bushings, and we're installing the new camshaft. But alright, the camshaft bushings are in place. Now let's check the oil channels. Alright, the camshaft bushings are installed. I've checked the oil channels, everything matches up, everything's good. Next, I'm installing the new tappets and then the camshaft itself. I've also prepared the compressor drive gear and the bolts. Next, the tappets. I installed the camshaft already attached to the compressor drive gear and flipped the engine over. So next I'll be working on the piston assembly. The piston assembly is completely new. That means the sleeve, piston rings and pin. I'd already opened one cylinder kit to check whether it was the right piston. Basically, checked everything. We unpacked the piston assembly, installed the sleeves and attached the pistons to the connecting rods. I've unpacked the piston assemblies, and marked each piston and sleeve, and now I'll weigh the assembled pistons, piston rings and pin 3508, 3502, 3594, 3588, 91, 3592, 88, 3594, 3591, 3588, 3589, that is, we see 88 and 84, the difference is 6 grams. But, well, we won't even take this 6 gram difference into account. So our pistons are perfectly balanced by weight. So next, I'll work on the sleeves. Time. So we see the height of the flange on all the sleeves is 10.07. So we install the sleeves for now without the adjustment ring and measure the protrusion. But I think we won't need the ring continued. Oh, alright, so I've installed the sleeves, already measured them, it's about 0.07. Now, let's measure the fifth sleeve. I pressed it down with my homemade clamps, and let's see. So we see the block here is at 0. The sleeve here is at 0.08. The block here is at 0, the sleeve is at 0.08, let's check again. The block is at 0, the sleeve here is at 0.08 hundredths. Okay, and let's check in the third plane, we also see the block is at 0. The sleeve is at 0.08, 0.08. So we can see the sleeve protrudes above the cylinder block. The fifth liner protrusion above the cylinder block is 0.08. But I check all the other sleeves in the same way. I measured the sleeve protrusion, all are about 0.07 or 0.08, which is normal. I've removed the sleeves and will install them with the rubber seals. We have Allen rubber seals, just in a slightly different package. These are specifically for MAN, without the adjustment ring. As you can see, there are two thin rings here. I've installed both 1 and 2 rubber seals. Use sealant and try different methods. Everything works fine each time. We unpack the rubber seals and install the sleeves in the block. Oh, shan't!
Oh, test. Shit. Danser. Garçon. Well. And continue.
I installed the sleeves and they go in easily if the rubber seals are well lubricated. As you can see, the liner is sticking up now. They all stick up like that. The upper rubber seal is installed, so you can't press it down now. Once the head is installed, it will press on the seal. Alright, the sleeve is installed. Now I'll turn the block over and start installing the crankshaft. Let's go. So the sleeves are installed. I put the block on its side again, lifted it up a bit like this. Basically got it ready for installing the crankshaft. So the crankshaft is also already prepared. Now the only thing left is to blow out the oil channels with air. I also prepared, washed and cleaned the caps, installed the bolts and applied lubricant to both the bolt heads and threads. So I've prepared the bearings. Now we're unpacking the bearings, blowing out the crankshaft, installing the bearings and installing the crankshaft into the block.
To be continued. Subtitles by
So I've unpacked and installed the bearings. As usual, the bearings with oil channel holes are installed in the block, and the solid bearings are installed in the cap. So the only thing I forgot to mention is that I still don't have this thrust ring for the oil seal. I removed the old one, but don't have a new one yet. I'm installing the crankshaft without it for now, and we'll add it later. It's not a problem. So I wiped down the crankshaft, I blew out the channels, wiped it again. Now I take assembly paste, lubricate it with assembly paste, and install it. Alright, so the crankshaft is installed and tightened, everything turned out well, everything is great, the end play is good too. I measured it, it's within spec 0.15. Alright, so I removed the old pistons, and now I want to show you something interesting. As you can see, we have 5 pistons that are still factory originals, and 1 piston was replaced at some point for some unknown reason. So 1 piston was replaced, and now we're weighing them. For example, we take an old piston and see that it weighs 3,660 grams. Let's take another old piston, 3,662 grams. I weighed all of them and they all weigh about 3,660 to 3,665 grams. So the difference is around 5 grams. Now we take this piston, the one that was replaced at some point, and we see that it weighs 3,603 grams. So the difference is almost 60 grams. This piston here is 60 grams lighter than all the others. And nevertheless, in principle, they paid attention to this during assembly, but maybe they just didn't weigh it, and possibly it didn't cause any critical consequences. Well, of course, all this could have led to something, but I'm just showing the fact that the piston is 60 grams lighter, and yet the engine still worked. This is about the maximum allowable weight difference between pistons. Alright, now we'll install the new pistons onto the connecting rods. We'll wash the connecting rods now, then start assembly. Alright, so I've installed the pistons onto the connecting rods and I've already prepared the bearings. The bearings are spotter bearings because the engine is turbocharged. They're standard size. So before installing the bearings, I want to remove, let's say, the piston rings from cylinder 6 and measure directly in the liner what the ring end gap is for these rings. So we can see that the oil control ring has a gap of 0.25 mm and the compression rings have a gap of 0.45 m, which is basically within the acceptable range. So, all the pistons are installed, all the connecting rods are tightened, meaning the rod fasteners are fully tightened. I checked how the oil nozzle fits into the recess, and everything is perfect. Everything is fine, there's no misalignment, nothing is getting stuck anywhere. I also want to show that all our main caps are marked, like 1K408, 2K408, 3K408. We can also see that the block itself has the number 3K408, and so on, 4, 5, 6, 7, and the connecting rod itself. There, the connecting rod body and the connecting rod cap are marked. So we see 458, and on the cap as well, 458. Here we have 490, and on the cap as well, 490, and so on. It's impossible to mix up the cap. The pistons and connecting rods are in place and tightened. Next, I'll install the counterweights. So All the counterweights are installed and tightened. That's it. The crankshaft is fully installed. The main caps are tightened. The connecting rods are tightened. And the counterweights are tightened. So we're done with the crankshaft. I've prepared the rear cover, prepared the front cover, washed and cleaned them, chased the threads, and removed the old gasket. I replaced the seals. We're using Airlink seals. I also replaced the seal on the flywheel housing, checked and chased all the threads as well. For now, I'll only install the rear housing. I can't install the front cover yet because I don't have the thrust washers. So for now, I'm working on this area. I'll install the housing, maybe the flywheel and the clutch. The housing is installed and tightened. Next, I'll be installing the flywheel, the pressure plate and the disc. We're keeping all of these old parts since they're in good condition and the car owner hasn't had any issues with the clutch. So the only thing that will be replaced is the bearing, and the release bearing will also be replaced later, but that's when we install the gearbox. So the release bearing and the bearing, that's all. Now, I'm installing the bearing and the flywheel. Then I'll install the pressure plate. I've prepared the clutch disc and the input shaft to be continued. Alright, so we continue assembling. I installed the cover that closes the compressor drive shaft, and I'm still waiting for this ring, this thrust ring for the oil seal. Thought it's a small issue, but it's delaying everything. I can't install the front cover or oil pan. During this time, I've disassembled the compressor while waiting for the washer and started repairing the cylinder heads. So the cylinder heads have already been through the surface grinder, and this is how great they look. I've already cleaned the valves, washed them, cleaned the heads again after the grinding. I blew off all the dust and removed it. I've cut the valve seats, but won't touch the sealing face since it's in good shape. So I've already machined all the valves, and I've already lapped one cylinder. That's the sixth one, as it turns out. Well, basically right now it doesn't really matter which one it is, but according to the marks it's the sixth. So we can see there's already an imprint from the seat on the valve, and we can also see it on the seat itself. If, for example, on the fifth one before lapping, the seat has that characteristic metallic shine, almost a mirror-like shine, then after lapping it becomes a bit dull. It's matte because the paste doesn't polish it. Our main focus is preserving the geometry. Alright, that's it. Now I'll wipe down all the remaining valves. I won't show that, and I'll show the heads when they're ready. So, I've lapped all the valves. You can see there's a seat track on every valve. Everything lapped in well, it looks great. Here's how the seats look now. Alright, so I've washed the heads here with solvent. Blew them out, washed and wiped the valves as well. Got the springs ready, got the washers ready, got the keepers ready, and new valve stem seals. That's it. Now I'm assembling the heads. And now the...
Enchanté.
Oh,
Danser. Garçon. Enchanté. Danser. Garçon.
alright, that's it. The heads are fully prepared for installation. While I was working on the heads, they brought the washer for the oil seal. Now I'm installing the washer, putting on the cover, and I'll try to get it closed up for the oil pan today. Next, I'll be installing the oil pan. I've prepared the plate, prepared the gaskets, and opened the, at least visually check the condition of the oil pump. Everything looks fine here. Well, of course, there's some wear on the shaft and on the gears themselves, but it's okay. So now I'm reassembling the oil pump, installing the pump, and closing the oil pan. I lifted the engine a bit, put some bottles underneath, checked it, turned the engine over again, made sure nothing was in the way, nothing got in there, and so on. We're going to put the oil pan on. First, I install the gasket, then this intermediate plate, then the oil pump, then another gasket, and only after that, the oil pan itself. So, the pressure relief valve is new. The oil pan is installed and tightened. That's it for today. Tomorrow we'll work on the cylinder head, install the heads. We still don't have the fuel pump. We're still waiting for it. We have a few issues with the compressor. The bearing will take a long time to arrive. Well, anyway, the oil pan is installed. That's enough for today. So the cylinder heads are already prepared. I showed how I prepared them. I got the bolts ready. I used different bolts. We won't be reusing the old ones. I'll install proper German bolts. So I've prepared the guide sleeves. I prepared the gaskets. Now I'm blowing out the cylinder heads again. I'm blowing out the cylinders and pistons again, and I'll wipe them a bit inside. So I'm blowing out and wiping everything. First I install the guide sleeves, then the gaskets, and then I install the cylinder heads. be continued. Alright, that's it. The cylinder heads are tightened, everything's good. Now these are some real bolts, you can really feel the resistance. It's actually satisfying to tighten them, but the new ones, for example, they're like plasticine. You tighten it and it just keeps going. You press it and it keeps going again. You can repeat that until it forms an hourglass shape. But when you tighten these bolts, the resistance is noticeable. It's something else from experience. The old German ones are better than some new ones from an unknown brand. If you buy new ones from a good brand, which might cost, I don't know, a few thousand rubles for just one bolt, then yes, I agree, they will also be of good quality. But those ones, I don't know, at 150 rubles a bolt, they're junk. Anyway, my bolts are tightened, heads are on. Now I need to install the injectors, but I don't have them yet, so we're waiting. I'll see what else to do now. I'll install the rocker arms and push rods, then adjust the valves for now. Yeah. All the heads are tightened. Next, I'll install the rocker arm shafts and push rods. So I've already checked the rocker arms, washed them, blew them out, cleaned them, checked everything. So the rocker arms are ready. The push rods are clean and not bent. Everything's ready, so I'm installing them. So I've adjusted the valves and now I'm closing the valve covers. I washed and cleaned the valve covers, leveled the surface on the machine, prepared the bolts and got the gaskets ready. To be continued. Alright, I closed the valve covers and covered this part with cardboard, secured by 2 bolts to prevent anything from falling in while I wait for the injectors. For now, I'll work on repairing the pump. So the pump is still sitting on the shelf. I haven't cleaned yet. Now I'll take it out, clean it, rebuild it, and install it. Alright, that's it. I rebuilt and installed the pump. Later, I'll put in the thermostats and the cover here, and another fitting here, but I'll assemble that a bit later. Next, I'll be installing the ski lock. Alright, next I'll be installing the high pressure fuel pump. The pump was taken for repair, well, not exactly repair. They tested it on the stand and said it needs repair, specifically replacement of the plunger pairs. We calculated that it would take about 110 or 120,000 for the repair of this pump. But let me remind you, this repair wasn't planned. So the owner of this engine has a limited budget, and that's why he refused to repair the pump. So they adjusted it somehow, did something to it, but still said that the plungers need to be replaced. Basically, I can say that I'm installing a faulty pump right now. The owner will eventually need to repair the pump. What am I doing now? Right now, I unscrewed these bolts and I'm about to install it to set the ignition timing precisely. I'll set it to 15 degrees. The manual says 14, but I'll set it 1 degree earlier at 15. So I unscrewed these 3 bolts, checked the tightness of these 13mm bolts, left one for now, and now I'll install it, set the mark, and then I'll install the pump on the engine with a new gasket. So here we see 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and here is 15 degrees before top dead center. The compression stroke on the pump. I see in this inspection window there's a little plate, a tab. That's it. The pump can be installed. So I brought the pump a bit closer. Now we see the mark is in the middle. It shifted a little. And these 2 bolts. Now I take out the pump, tighten the lower 2 bolts, and then install the pump onto the sealing ring. Alright, that's it. I installed the pump, tightened it, tightened these bolts, and here's the additional mount. Here we have the 4th bolt, the 4th mount. There's just a stud there without a nut. Well, as usual, nobody puts it there because later it's almost impossible to unscrew it in place. Let's check the mark one more time. We see that the tab is exactly in the middle. And on the flywheel we have 15 degrees. That's it. The pump is set. Now I'm tightening the plug and we'll install the injectors. Next, we'll be installing the injectors. The injectors were repaired, the nozzles were replaced, 2 of these nuts were replaced on 2 injectors, and these inserts were also replaced. Alright, so the injectors have been repaired, the washers are new, the nuts are old, I've washed, cleaned, and prepared everything. A guide fell out of one injector, so I'll try to put it back in. Installing the injector is hard without it. I'll spray the injector itself with copper grease, and I'll use ceramic paste on the nut so it doesn't seize up and can be unscrewed easily next time. To be continued. continued. To be continued. To be continued. So next, I installed the return pipe and the high pressure pipes. So I've washed, blown out and cleaned everything. We'll use new bolts. The bolts for the return line are new. I'll show you the old ones. It's a 6mm bolt with one side of the thread wound down for constant diesel flow. I've done this before. When I lack these bolts, I will use all new ones and add new washers to the return line. I'll anneal them now. I'll cool them in water so they get softer. And then I'll install everything. So I showed this process in one of the episodes, that is annealing copper. There were many comments like, why do this, it will harden, etc. But with copper, this process works differently. It doesn't harden it, it actually makes it much softer. So you can see how pliable it has become. So it became really, really soft. Alright, so I installed the return line, all the tubes, the bracket from that block, tightened it, that's it. Now I can install the intake manifold. The intake manifold is already prepared. If I remember right, there was a lot of dust in it. I washed everything, cleaned everything, blew everything out. Basically I cleaned everything as much as I could. I prepared the gaskets, prepared the bolts, let's install it. Alright, that's it. I installed the manifold. Here I'll also secure the fuel supply hose. I installed the fitting for the breather mount, and now I'm installing the thermostats. I'm keeping the old thermostat 79 degrees, I'm installing new gaskets. I installed the manifold and took care of a few other small tasks. Now, about the compressor, it's still disassembled because we don't have the bearing yet. We're waiting for the bearing, which should arrive around the 9th or 10th. By the 12th, the truck should already be assembled and out the door. Waiting for the bearing to then assemble the compressor isn't an option, since it'll already be the 11th by then. So, what will be done? The engine will be installed without the compressor. I made a plug like this for it. For now, I made it out of cardboard. I don't know, maybe tomorrow I'll cut it out of plywood. We'll see. The engine will be installed without the compressor. I'll paint it now without the compressor, just using this plug. So, and then the compressor, when I assemble it, well, as people will be installing it by that time, I'll have the compressor assembled and will install it on the spot. Well, that's the plan. That's how it turned out. There won't be a bench start. We don't have time. So, I'll try to film the startup on the truck, but we'll see how it goes. I have my own work. People have their own work. Schedules might not match up and so on. I'll try filming it on the truck, since I'm interested, but I can't promise anything yet. I'm putting the engine on the stand to prepare it for painting. So I turned the engine over, moved the table and put it on the pallet because it's really tall this way. On the table, it would have been taller than me. Next I installed the heat exchanger and now I'm installing the filter. Next I'll be installing the manifold and the turbocharger. I prepared and cleaned the manifold and I found that there's a crack in it. We decided to leave it like that for now. So the turbocharger has been repaired for repairs and it was brought back packaged like this. We haven't unpacked it yet. let's continue. I prepared the engine for painting, put plugs everywhere, covered the threads, plug things up here and there. I'll paint the filters too, since they'll be replaced later. For now, they'll serve as plugs. So I just covered the mounting spot where the gearbox sits. If some paint gets on the pressure plate, it's not a big deal. I covered the manifold with tape like this here. I'll be able to paint at an angle like this and cover these spots. I covered everything here with tape as well. So I've prepared everything for painting. I'll start by priming using acrylic primer and then auto enamel. The auto enamel is air dried and doesn't require a hardener. I'll use a thinner with it. So if anyone asks why I'm using this paint, it's because that's what was brought in. I don't handle the purchasing. We'll paint with whatever was supplied. The color is called Gray 671, so it looks something like this. Alright, now we're starting with the primer. So that was the primer. This is how it looks now after the primer. And now I've mixed the paint. I think it's about... There's practically no difference in color. I don't think there will be. It'll just have a glossy finish. Otherwise the color is almost identical. I'll show it again. The paint we have is called Gray 671. This is an air drying automotive enamel. So I diluted it a little with this thinner here. Well, I think maybe it's a bit thick. I'll try it now, and if it's too thick, we'll add a little more. Alright, let's start painting. So I removed the tape everywhere. Well, not everywhere. I left some on the turbo. We'll take it off here as we go. So I installed the starter, and now I'm getting ready to put in the gearbox. So I wanted to replace the release bearing because, well, this one doesn't really have any wear, but it was turning very stiffly, really tight. So I soaked it in diesel, worked it in. Apparently some dust got in there. Now it spins perfectly. I greased it as much as I could. That's it. The release bearing is still the old one. I already installed it on the clutch cover and fastened the pin. Basically, some of them stay on the clutch cover, some need to be installed on the sleeve depending on the fork. So with this fork, my bearing came out and stayed on the clutch cover, so I'll install it the same way. I also cleaned the sleeve from dirt and dust, greased it, installed the bearing, and fastened the pin. So we're keeping the entire old clutch, the flywheel, the clutch cover, the disc, and the bearing. The only new part is the small pilot bearing that's installed in the flywheel.